Well, hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Live at 5. Live at 5 is a stream that I do aptly every day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 5 p.m. on my main channel. On Fridays, we go over to my second channel, Actively Unwoke for Happy Hour. And on Saturdays, if I'm not doing Sassy Saturday streaming, I kind of rest and take a break. And then we get up on Sunday to do it all over again. Well, guys, we've got what I think is going to be a really interesting stream and chat with my guest today, Andrew Gold. Andrew is a journalist and TV presenter who he produces like crazy content. He does stuff like around exorcism and cults and aliens and all sorts of stuff. And we had a great chat earlier today. Andrew was nice enough to have me on his podcast. And so now we're kind of returning the favor, and I want to make sure that you guys get a chance to meet him as well, because I do find his work just genuinely fascinating. I've had a chance to peruse some of his YouTube channel in the past day or so, and I think some of the content around cults, and he does stuff with Jehovah's Witnesses, he's done stuff with Scientology, and it's just like, and I was watching his exorcism documentary last night, and it's really cool. And so we're going to get into a lot of stuff about that. His information is in the description down below somewhere, whether you're watching on YouTube or Rockfin or Odyssey or Rumble. I forgot to go live on Rockfin. There we are. Now we're live on there as well. So we're going to get into that in a second. But before we do, I just want to do a couple quick reminders. Now, this is not my only live stream of the day. It is just my first live stream of the day. And we will be gathering at 9:30 p.m. tonight for Nothing Remotely Controversial with Joshua, which is my regular Tuesday show where we talk about the news, and Joshua, who is a psychic, will try to predict what's going to happen for us. Even if you don't believe in the psychic stuff, I promise you it's really fun. We always have a great time with it. And I know you're going to fall in love with Joshua. If you watch it once, you won't be able to resist coming back. So that'll be at 9:30 tonight. And then also remember, that one. Also remember that Joshua is making a special appearance in my locals community tomorrow at 9 p.m. for supporters only. He's going to be doing an Introduction to Astrology 101 class. So if you don't understand the stuff that Joshua is talking about on Nothing Remotely Controversial, now is your chance to understand that. He's a wonderful teacher. This is going to be a private event just for my local supporters. And how you get access to that and all of the other perks that are available by supporting the work I'm doing here with the daily streams and all this stuff is you can become a member of my locals community at kb.locals.com/support. And you can join for $5 a month. So definitely less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks. And I think it's totally worth it. Also $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift to support the work I'm doing, which I really appreciate. Now, I want to do a special plug right now for annual membership, because when you become an annual member in my locals, or you upgrade from a monthly member to an annual member, you are going to get to request an autographed, customized book plate for Actively Unwoke. My book is coming out on May 10th. It is the ultimate guide for fighting back against woke insanity in your life, and all of my annual locals members will be able to request a customized autographed bookplate from me that I will send to you with your name and your message, or a message for someone else. Or you don't even have to tell me what to write or anything. You can just say, Carlin, write whatever you want, and I'll write you something sassy that you can have in your book forever. But that's going to be available until the book goes on sale, so next couple of weeks. So that's available to all locals members, and the information is in the community. Also, for anyone who pre-orders the book, you are going to get a chance to come to a 3-part book club with me, where we're going to be going over the different sections of the book. We're going to talk about decoding the woke ideology. We're going to talk about case studies and practical things you can do to fight back. And we're going to talk about how to maintain your sanity and survive cancellation. And those are going to start on May 21st. We're going to do one on June 4th and June 18th. So plenty of time to get the book, read a couple chapters, and then you'll be able to come to a private Zoom with me where we're going to talk it all out and strategize about what this means for real people in the real world. All that is available when you pre-order my book. You can go to activelyunwoke.com and get Amazon and non-Amazon pre-order options, because I know many of you really don't like Amazon all that much. I totally get it. So just ping on the main page. So you get pre-order on Amazon, pre-order on non-Amazon options, and whatever's clever for you. All right. Without further ado, now that I have done my shameless grifting and shilling, we are going to welcome Andrew to the show. Hey, Andrew. Thanks for spending some time today.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Oh, we had a great conversation before, didn't we?
I really enjoyed it. I wish it had lasted longer. So I'm excited we have like a part 2.
Yeah, I always do this thing where it's like, it's been an hour, we're done, because of the editing afterwards and all that stuff. And also because it's like, leave ourselves wanting more.
Yeah, no, I think it's probably a good policy. But I'm super excited to kind of get into some more stuff with you here today. So can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be doing what you're doing today?
Sure, I'm a yes, British journalist, and
I can never
I
tell that you were a British journalist. It's shocking.
I'm a British journalist. That's my American
Oh
accent. Sorry,
God.
I'm trying. I do accents all the time, and I do them terribly, really, really bad. It's the one party trick I wish I really had, and I can't do it. British journalist. What else? What else do I do? Well, I was interested in sort of culty weird stuff. I grew up watching this guy called Louis Theroux, who in America, I think you know him, if you know him at all, as Louis Theroux, the son of Paul Theroux, the cousin of Justin Theroux, and all these Jennifer Aniston. And he Louis Theroux was very famous in the UK for like doing these. He was like on screen as a presenter, a bit like Michael Moore or something, but not political, and going around and sort of making jokes and being a bit funny and meeting these really kooky, weird, strange people. So that's why I'll end up like going out and meeting an exorcist and hanging out with him and learning to perform the exorcisms, but doing it all with a bit of a wry smile, not in a really condescending way, but then also trying to expose that, for example, this exorcist was, having abusive relationships with the schizophrenic young women that he was sort of kidnapping from psychiatric wards. So all these weird, strange, funny things, but also with some sort of profundity, and also languages. I like languages, so I've learned to speak 5 languages, and I do my work in those languages, whether it be Spanish, French, German, or Portuguese, or whatever. I say or whatever as if there's more than that, but there's not. And yeah, that's what it is really. And I suppose the languages mixed with this interest in sort of other cultures and other worlds and things got me making these things and got me interested in cultish thinking as well, and got me making these things for BBC and HBO. And now I have my podcast, On the Edge with Andrew Gold, which you're on. It's going to be, or in a few weeks that will come out.
I know. Yeah. I'm really excited about that. Now, so like, what is it like to work with the BBC? I'm just curious.
Oh, it's such a hard one, isn't it? I think it's something that I'm learning from people like yourself and a lot of people who are a bit more outspoken online, that it's way past that time where I have to just keep going, oh, I've got to be careful just in case someone's listening. Because firstly, they're not listening. Like some BBC producer is just not listening. They're doing whatever they're doing, and they don't even know YouTube exists. They're so like old fashioned with that stuff now. I know they do have BBC on YouTube, but they're not thinking about it in a way they should be. And yeah, I just screw them. It was terrible. So I mean, I had to make the film about this exorcist, for example. I'd already done some stuff for HBO. They were interested, they liked the idea, and then they were just, nothing happened. It was impossible, and they didn't tell me why. So I went and made it, just me and my friend David, who's a great director, as it happens, and we just borrowed equipment and worked part-time and stuff, and just basically lived almost with this exorcist in Argentina, where we happened to be living. So it was a mad few months, and then we had to teach ourselves how to edit, and it took months, and then we had to annoy the BBC for about 2 years for them just to watch this film. And the film's pretty different, because at the end he screams at me, the exorcist, and throws me in a room, and we think he's going to kill us and that kind of thing. So we knew we had something good, and it started winning festival films. Eventually they took the film, and they took it very begrudgingly, because they basically said to us, like, well, what we'll do is we'll take the worldwide rights, which is unheard of in documentaries. Usually they would take the territory, maybe if it's in America, it's just America, just the UK, that kind of thing. And usually it would be maybe for 1 year, you'd have the contract. They said, we want to take it in perpetuity and the worldwide rights. And they were going to pay us about, I think it would be about $8,000 or $9,000. Then they asked us to make changes and check things with lawyers and all that stuff, which cost more than the money that they gave us. So we lost money making this film, and because they'd taken the worldwide rights, it meant we couldn't sell it elsewhere afterwards. So we just lost money and didn't have money to make the next film and all of that kind of thing. And then afterwards, what I think might interest you more is, like, I went and had meetings with them, and I said, why was it made so difficult for me when they're paying people who don't, direct and edit and do all, people who just show up, they pay them like $1 million or whatever for, or more than that per year. Why was it made so difficult for me? Why can't I get more documentaries made? What's going on? And they sort of wouldn't really say. They sort of shuffled their feet and stuff like that. I got an agent, and then she told me the truth, and she was just like, look, they are not going to put a white man on camera in this day and age. They're just not going to do it. We can try, and that's what we're going to do. So we spent the next 4 or 5 years, she was just like shopping me out to production company after production company in the UK, as well as some emails back and forth with like people like Vice in America as well, and it was just the same response time after time. Very little written, but it face to face. Me and my director David would sit there and we just waited for the moment, because they'd talk to us like, oh, we love these ideas. It was ideas like I don't know, a vigilante group in I think it was Peru, might have been Bolivia, I should know really, where they make adulterers stand on anthills and they whip people if they're prostitutes and things like that. So that was like or Ecuador.
I want to see a documentary about that.
Right? That's the thing.
I want to see a documentary about that.
I know. And then like gay conversion in Ecuador. Really interesting thing about Ecuador and a gay conversion, right? Because gay conversion, there's always a talk about banning it, and I think is it banned? It's not banned it's banned in some states, and in the UK they're always talking about whether they should ban it. And what's never talked about is that banning things, as we know with a lot of other things like drugs and things like that, can often make things worse. And I don't think anyone's gone at it from that angle, gay conversion. But in Ecuador they banned it because it was quite a common practice there, and then it got much, much worse. So instead of there being like a psychiatrist who would go and like, a phony psychiatrist who would go, oh, I can cure your gayness or whatever it might be, instead you'd get like lesbians being kidnapped at 3 a.m. from their houses and forced underground. They'd go missing for 6 months at a time. No one knew where they were. They were being beaten and abused in these underground sort of mafia places, because that's what happens often when you make things illegal. So it's a really interesting. So all those kinds of, I'm going off topic, but all those kinds of things were like, it's my bread and butter,
No, I mean, but those are the kind of things that like I want to see. Those are the kind of documentaries that should be made. I feel like what's going on in the media right now, and I mean, just in general, not even just like in the news media, but it's just like they're so not creative. There's no creativity. There's no interesting stories. There are no news stories. They're remaking movies all the time. It just makes no sense. I feel like since the pandemic, we have lost all ability to have any interesting, good content ever moving forward. Do you get that?
So. Oh, absolutely! It's so boring. It's like you say, repetitive news cycle. But that's why I was always interested in, like I say, Louis Theroux. He did those kinds of stories, although they were always in America, because there was something about his British accent that gave him this faux naive facade. When he'd talk to people trusted him a bit more because he had that kind of like, oh, can you tell me about that? And they're like, yeah, sure, man. So it sort of worked. Whereas for me, it was often like these different language places like Argentina or Ecuador. So I would sit there and tell them about these stories, these different production companies. And they would sit there sometimes, you don't always make a sale. They're not always interested. But I think most of them were nodding along like, wow, wait, what was that about Ecuador? What was that about? And I had 100 stories like that and series and ways of putting them together. And there'd always be a part in the meeting when they would say, okay, listen, we love the ideas. We want to take this to Channel 4 and to the BBC and so on. How married are you to the idea? And we knew it was coming. How married are you to you being the journalist on screen? And I was like, well, I did do all the research and I have called all these people and kept relationships. Another one was a Miss Chubby contest in Paraguay, where they have one of the most overweight obesity problems in the world, and they have this Miss Chubby thing, and it's like, really, are you just, is it like a freak show, or is it a good thing because of all that kind of thing, and it was quite painful to get that. It was very painful to hear, we like your work, we like your ideas, but they would say, we just want a minority to be the on-screen journalist or presenter. And they joked. There were always jokes like, we can break your legs if you want, because then you'd be part of a minority.
Wow. Can you just claim that you're like gay or pansexual or trans or something? Would that work? What if you identified as a trans man?
They often said that a trans man, so I'd have been a woman. I mean, I'd have to. The thing is, I'm 6'4". It's unlikely.
Oh, some women are tall. I don't know.
Adam's apple.
Well, but I mean, the thing about trans though is like you don't even need to transition now. So you could just identify as a trans woman and say, just like I'm comfortable the way I am. Why do I need to suit you?
I have a feeling it wouldn't work. I don't know, or maybe I just couldn't do it, because I could have just also worn some sort of religious garb. I could have put on some sort of Orthodox. I'm from a Jewish family. I could have put on a whole Jewish Orthodox thing. I could have put on a Muslim whatever. Maybe that would have helped.
Maybe. Something to try next time. So my last, I have to tell you about my last encounter with the BBC, because it was ridiculous. I will never go on the BBC again. So over February 2021, I broke the story about the Coke Be Less White training, right? And it went all over the internet. Did you hear about this?
No. The what? Say that again.
So Coca-Cola did a training with their employees that they required their employees to do that literally had a slide in it that said try to be less white. And had other crazy stuff too. And it was a Robin DiAngelo training based on white fragility. And someone at Coca-Cola sent me these slides from the training, and I basically tweeted them out, not really thinking much about it because like I'm so desensitized to this woke stuff now. I never know what's going to go viral and what isn't. Well, this went really viral and it got like 27 million views and it was like all over the news everywhere. And so I was doing these media interviews and the BBC called me and they said, "Oh, do you want to come on?" And they gave me like a really specific list of questions and they said they wanted it to be about the Coke Be Less White training. And I had to stay up till like midnight or something to do this call because it was for like the early it was a nightmare. And so I had a full day of interviews and then I had to stay up late to talk to the BBC. And I get on the phone with this reporter and she starts ambushing me with questions about January 6th, like in the middle of the interview. And she was like, "Don't you think this is white supremacy?" And I was like, "No, I really don't." And she just started, she started yelling at me to the point where I just hung up on her. And then I tweeted at the BBC to go F themselves. And I have never been on the BBC ever again since. And I don't think I will be invited back.
Do you know her name, the journalist?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I definitely tweeted out the emails the BBC sent me saying, "This is what you assholes said I was going to be talking about. And then you ambush me with this other bullshit."
Man, it's so sneaky. There's a whole sneakiness. I think you and I were talking off air before about about journalism itself, and journalism is a horrible industry, I think, and you know we're known for it as well, and just like lawyers are known for that as well. You know, it's for journalism to work in many cases, you sort of rely on human misery, and you have to have more misery, or you're not selling newspapers. And I don't mind that because it's a job. But what annoys me is that journalists won't admit it. And time after time, I have said to other journalists, you know, for example, I did a documentary about abortion, right? I was following a woman who was called the crazy baby lady in Argentina, and looking at both sides or whatever. And there's a woman who had an abortion, and I'm asking her questions, and as she's answering, she starts crying. And that puts a journalist in a really difficult position because on the one hand, you've become quite friendly with this contributor, especially if you're hands-on with the film like I am and you meet them before and all that stuff. And it's very sad to see. But on the other hand, you know, you and the camera person and the sound person, they're all going bingo because you've got the shot. And anyone who's thinking, "Oh, that's horrible," well, you're the ones watching it as well and enjoying that dramatic moment. So we're all part of it. And that's okay. But let's admit it. And I ask journalist after journalist, I say, "Do you ever feel that conflicted feeling?" Because I do, you know, do you ever think about that? And I don't think it's that they're lying to me. I think they won't admit it to themselves. And they'll just go like, "Oh, no, it's just like, it's about the person in the moment. It's very sad." It's like, come on, you needed that shot. So journalism, that person calling you up doesn't think about what day you're having, doesn't think about that she's being completely, you know, irresponsible and unprofessional because she's asked you to do a certain thing and she's now going to, you know, I would never just suddenly drop that on someone. I would, if I was going to ask you those things, I would make sure you're prepared so that it's fair, but they don't. And they think they're the good guys. That's what's insidious about it.
No, they definitely think they're the heroes, and it's infuriating to me. And one of the things that you know, I've been working kind of like with this team of volunteers lately to do actual what I'm calling actual journalism around like investigating what's going on in the schools and whatnot, because I don't view journalists as real journalists anymore. They go on Twitter and they call that journalism. But I'm also pretty upfront with it in that I will not call myself a journalist. I mean, I'm an activist. Like, let's be honest, I have a definitive point of view. I will not tell both sides of the story. I will not give the schools a chance to comment because I really don't care what they have to say and they're going to lie anyway. And I wish that more journalists would be more honest about what they're doing because, you know, I may be acting like an activist, but I feel like I'm at least being honest about what my position is, and they're not.
You've like read my mind. That's exactly how I feel about it. I gave a speech about it at the Bristol Humanist Society recently, exactly about that. Like, a lot of journalism is being replaced by activism. I gave the example of, I can't remember his name. There's a comedian who went to, I think it was a trans rally or a Black Lives Matter rally. And, oh, do you know who I mean? He's a comedian who's very loud. He has sort of a big mouth, and he got caught in a pose where he was like,
I don't know. Who is it? I don't know.
Oh, someone will know. But it was like this huge thing. He's got like a big YouTube following and stuff, and
Oh.
he was caught at this trans rally, and it was basically the I wonder who it was as well. It was Associated Press, who was supposed to be like the neutral people. They are not activists. They are people who report like the wires. That's what journalists, when a journalist is an activist, we take the news and sort the source from Associated Press or Reuters or someone, and then we turn it into whatever activism we want to do. But they've got to be neutral. And they had it as a caption. It was just like this guy, angry man at a trans rally confronting everyone and all that stuff. And if you watched, there's a video clip which they're taking it from, and the video clip shows him like totally like not angry, not aggressive. He's just standing there debating with people. Meanwhile, there were like people screaming at him on the other side, like pushing and shoving, and they're making signs at him, and they're just like really having a go at him. And they were very violent, and it wasn't shown. They had to retract it, but even in their retraction, if I remember right, it was like a sarcastic. It was as sarcastic as a very professional organization can be, if you know what I mean. It was like, we shouldn't have said that. We should have just said this, and it was still implying that he was in the wrong. It's just like, that's not journalism.
No, exactly. So you've done a lot of work and research into different cults and things. Which are scarier to you, cults or journalists?
It's the same thing, isn't it? I think. And I mean that as well. It's look, I don't know. We were talking before, weren't we, about we're just a bunch of people floating about. We're just idiots, and none of us know what we're doing, and then we die.
It's very true. You just described my daily life, basically.
We're just so influenced by stuff, and we don't know that we are. And I think that's what the journalism is, and that is what being in a cult is as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about that. What cults have you looked into?
So on my podcast, I think I've tried to do all of them. One I hadn't done was like the Moonies. I don't know much about the Moonies, but yeah, they're coming up soon. Mm-hmm. But so far, I mean, my first ever episode. I mean, the reason I started the podcast was because of this whole thing. I couldn't get my documentaries on TV anymore. And at some point, especially once the whole COVID thing happened, I was sitting there like, well, I've got all these contacts now. Why don't I just interview them myself and put it out there to the world? And luckily, it started taking off. At least the audio version did, and now the YouTube version is starting to. But my first ever episode was a former Westboro Baptist Church member, the son of the founder. Yeah. So that was like a baptism of fire, so to speak. So they're just nuts. And then, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Scientologists, NXIVM cult was an interesting one. Hasidic Jews, I find them really interesting because I know a lot of people who haven't met a lot of Jewish people. They think that everyone either wears like the little hat that Ben Shapiro's got, or they're like these Orthodox people who are like really, really Orthodox. And most of us are not like that. But those guys are really interesting to me, and they can be horrible. And extreme Muslims, I've done quite a few times, and as you can imagine, that's not gone down that well with a lot of people. But you've got to do all of them, don't you?
Yeah, I would think so. So how do you define a cult exactly?
I think there is no consensus, and I can feel people listening now in my head. I'm not imaginary people in my head, but people listening to this channel, thinking like that they have their preconceptions of what a cult is, and they go, "No, this is it. That's it." I just had Amanda Montell on, who's like a cult expert, and her father was in a cult, and she talks a lot about cults. And her consensus, she says there is no consensus really about what is a cult. Even the word's etymology is really, really obscure. No one's quite sure. And it's long been used as just basically a synonym for religion, but that's an insulting one. You could say that's your religion, and someone says, no, that's a cult. It's an insult. And she talks about something really, really interesting to me, which is that, we think of, either... I guess we think of religions, or we think of like NXIVM, multi-level marketing maybe. But there are so many other kinds of cults, from fitness gurus, right, to like jumbo juice people. And I think you can be I've heard there's a cult of one if you're somebody who can be quite cultish about yourself. Not that I exactly know what that means. So I would say it's, rather than something being a cult or not, I think it's really on a spectrum. And maybe like the Heaven's Gate cult, which is a fascinating one, because those guys killed themselves because they thought they were going to meet aliens in a higher plane or something. And then there's like obviously Jonestown. So those are like a 10 out of 10. And then maybe like a 3 out of 10 is some sort of fitness guru down the road from your office or whatever. And it's not bad to have a 3 out of 10 cult, to be in one. They're not ruining your life like the 10 out of 10 one is. So it's just about how much control they have over you. And one of the things that Amanda Montell says that I really liked as advice for people who are in cults and if they feel like they might be in some sort of cult, it's not to go away from cults. It's not to lean away from them, as you might imagine. It's actually to start getting involved in lots of cults. So rather than
a diversity of cult.
Exactly. If you've got loads of cults, then it's like if one of them goes bust, if one of them goes crazy, which inevitably it happens when you've got some sort of guru leading a group of people, then at least you've got lots of other things going on. And that recently happened with Lloyd Evans of the Jehovah's Witness, the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and I got quite heavily involved in all that. Lloyd Evans is one of the top sort of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. So you get all these people who've just left Jehovah's Witnesses, which is quite an extreme cult, I would say. They leave that and they go to him, and then he becomes a cult. So it's a bit like, what's that drug that people have when they get off of, H or whatever, like methadone or something?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
It's sort of, you're getting off Jehovah's Witnesses and you're getting onto the ex-Jehovah's Witness cult,
It's kind of like addictions. Usually they just change forms. So like people who are like really overweight, they're addicted to food, and then they decide to lose the weight, and then they get addicted to the gym, and it's just like the addiction hasn't gone away. They just shifted the focus of the addiction.
Exactly that is, yeah. And it's that's usually like impulsive people. I've got a friend who is an alcoholic and he's given up that, and it's like every second there's like coffee in his mouth, there's like his hands are doing things, he's just constantly, some people are quite impulsive like that. With the Lloyd Evans one in particular, it was really interesting for me to see, because a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses follow my channel, which is interesting for me because I never knew anything about them before I started the channel, and they're all really lovely, nice people. And they spoke to me about it while this was happening, because this Lloyd Evans, basically the head of the ex-Jehovah's Witness group, or one of the heads, so one of the top guys, was found to have been having affairs, extramarital affairs with sex workers, despite sort of preaching all the time about not doing that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And they took it really hard, the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. They were just in bits about it. They were emotionally wrecked. And that was really interesting for me, because for me it was like, okay, they're following this YouTube channel and that's it. But no, that, to me, that was a sign that it was a bit cultish.
One of the things I've really learned from being on YouTube is people really do get very deeply emotional about these things. And it's like, you almost have to be very mindful when you're making content about how it is going to impact people emotionally. And I never try to allow that to dictate the content that I make, because I want to do what I want to do. But it is something that is a weird thing, that all of a sudden you have 100 comments from people saying, how dare you do this? It is horrible that you covered this thing. And I'm like, I just made a video talking about the news. Like, relax,
Mm-hmm.
calm down. But you can't say that because they don't want to listen. So you've looked at all sorts of types of cults. I think so one of the things about Heaven's Gate for me that was really interesting, and it kind of coincides with the woke, is and correct me if I'm wrong, because I've only watched I think the HBO documentary on this. But they tried to get rid of gender, didn't they?
You might be right. I don't actually know about that, but it doesn't surprise me. I know they changed the names of everybody, and everybody. It wouldn't. Another interesting one on the same lines is the Jonestown Massacre, because his whole thing, Jim Jones, was about eradicating racial disparities and stuff. And what he would do is preach loads of woke stuff, what we would call woke now, about equality, but he also had sort of an internal harem of women who were all white to be his sort of sex slaves and stuff like that. So in practice, he actually was a bit of a racist, and his preaching was all about equality. So he's a perfect example of a dark triad, wokey person.
Have you found any cults yet that don't involve sex abuse or some sort of sex-related scandal?
Well, again, it depends how extreme on the top, out of 10 it is, right? But I think Karlin Borisenko is a cult, right? To an extent.
I literally have been told that I'm a cult leader and I'm manipulated. They've actually been talking about it in the chat. They're like, Karlin, tell him about our cult, because we get accused of being a cult and I get accused of being a cult leader all the time. Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting, and it's interesting they say that. And look, as a linguist, I'm always thinking about language, right? And language, I asked a linguist, what was her name? Lera Boroditsky. She's fantastic, and really knowledgeable about language, although she is a bit woke, actually. So maybe don't look her up.
No.
But she's really good. And I said to her, what is language? And she said, language is manipulation. That is what language is for. It's why we have it. You have it so you can say to someone, hey, can you do this? That's what can you get me some drink, mum? That's how it starts. So you are manipulating your audience every time you speak to them. You are giving them your opinions. They are looking up to you. You're not a 10 out of 10 cult, but like me, you are. And I recently did a 30-day YouTube video course because, as I was saying, my audio podcast took off and YouTube, I wasn't with it. I've got this nice camera now and all that stuff. So I'm getting into the YouTube and I thought I'll do this course, and it was expensive. And well, not that expensive, but it was expensive for me. And it did each day was a new title. And first it started with thumbnails, get your thumbnails good and all that stuff. Soon it went into sacred words. You've got to have certain words that you say at the beginning and end. Rituals, certain rituals. Icons, you've got to have an icon. That's another day, right? Learning all about the kinds of icons. Well, look behind me. I've got the lights, right? Those are my icons. You'll recognize. You see that, immediately it's me. And then there was even stuff one day was non-believers. So you've got to create non-believers, and I have seen it on YouTuber after YouTuber. Once I read that, I saw on so many it was they created enemies. And sometimes they do it. I'm not suggesting they're that manipulative. I think we all do it naturally in a sense. I'm on a guy called Sean Atwood's show on Wednesdays, and he's amazing. He's one of the best people I've ever met, and I co-host his show on Wednesdays. I'm very fortunate that he gets me to do that. And once I remember the internet went down and it stopped working for a second, and we got it going back again, and it was just me and him in this the green room before going back on, and he's going, "They're taking us down, man. It's YouTube again." And I was like, "Mate, it was the internet." And he's like, "It's YouTube. They're against us." And he's creating in his mind a non-believer, and that's just between me and him. Then we go on and he's telling all the listeners as well, the viewers, YouTube have taken us down. They won't get away with it. And it's the non-believer. So that is essentially what YouTube is. It's essentially what most businesses are. I mean, all those things apply for anyone listening now. Take those things in mind. If you want your business to do well, get a bit culty about it.
Speaking of which, guys, if you haven't mounted that like button yet, now might be the time to mount it, or do whatever you want to. We can do whatever we want to the like button on this channel, Andrew. Just so you know, if you have feelings about the like button, you can do whatever you want to as well. Whether you want to caress it or okay, we're gonna stop there. Okay,
like it. Click like. Everyone click like. Sign up to Carlin's book stuff, and so you can talk to her on Zoom as well.
Absolutely do that. That's the best thing to do. So okay, so would you say that but the higher level on the spectrum a cult gets in terms of being closer to an 8 or a 9 or a 10 out of 10, is there usually sexual stuff going on?
Yes. Yeah, I'm thinking of certain ones. Yes, yeah. I mean, NXIVM was a really good example. Do you know much about NXIVM?
I do know a little bit about it, yeah.
Madness. And I spoke to someone called Kelly Thiel on my podcast about NXIVM. She was in it. And it was, I guess already, but for anyone who doesn't, it was basically, they disguised themselves as a multi-level marketing platform, which is a really bad disguise for a cult, because it's it's a synonym basically for cult. And he did this thing, he had this inner circle. He would teach, basically, they were supposed to teach people about sort of life-affirming lessons and how to be charitable and how to be happy and all this kind of thing, very similar to Scientology. And like Scientology, a lot of the stuff is held back from you. That's how the cults work. They use all this cultish language. They do love bombing at the beginning, which is just telling you how wonderful you are, which to a certain kind of person who doesn't, I don't know, certain people respond to that. It feels fantastic. I'd love people telling me nice things.
That was what the conservatives did to me when I first went to that Trump rally and my article went viral. I got loved. I was like the conservative darling for a month and a half. So I totally understand it. It's really nice. It's fun. It feels good.
Imagine that. Imagine being, if I'm a big conservative and then I see you writing that thing, I was the other thing and now I'm on this thing. I would love you as well. If I love, I'm a big football fan, and if a player who's on the other team and he's always against my team, but then he's like, actually, your team's better. I'd love that person. But yeah, so Keith Raniere, the guy who did NXIVM, he had this inner sanctum called DOS, which is like MS-DOS, if you remember that, but it stood for something else that was weird. And people, to get in there, you had to progress to a certain level, like Scientology, and that's where all the big information was. He was like, you get to this level, that's when you're going to get all the secrets to happiness and joy. And just to get in there, you have to give collateral, they called it, a monthly collateral, which was saying basically, and it was Alison Mack, who was the actress from Smallville, which is a really strange, no one expected that because she has this really angelic face. She just looks so nice and sweet and lovely.
Perfect recruiter.
Perfect. And she was like going around getting everybody's collateral, and there were emails out there of her just, hey, give me your monthly collateral, and that meant you had to say, right, well, my husband's been having an affair with so and so. Here are some photos of my husband's penis, or like photos, emails, anything like that is insanely secret, and that if it got out there, your life would be ruined. You had to send that monthly to them, or just like, yeah, just mad. And people's just started. They even said you can make it up. Like, you can make it up if you want, as long as we have evidence that you've written that your husband did a horrible thing, your son did this or that at school. And then they were in. And then once they were in, they got branded with hot poker irons.
That's the craziest piece of this whole thing, is the branding. And it was Allison Mack's and Keith's initials.
Yes. Yeah. So it was supposed to be a symbol that from like, some weird old symbol, and no one realized until they turned it sideways. And you're right. It was their initials. Creepy. And then they realized that they were in a sex cult. They became Keith Ranieri's sex trafficking sex slaves.
Do you have any sense of how people get sucked in, like previously normal people getting sucked into these cults just to do absurd and crazy things? Because, I've watched a couple documentaries about NXIVM, and it seems to me that these women were just like average women. Like, they had it together. There was nothing, they weren't like antisocial. It didn't seem like they had anything. They didn't have mental health issues so far as I understood. It was just they ended up in this place where they're literally laying naked on a table being branded. Like, what happened?
I think it's a sense of purpose, and NXIVM is a really good one to look at because it was a lot of sort of high society people. That's why, and it's similar to Scientology. Obviously, Keith Raniere, the chief of NXIVM, had done his homework on Scientology, and it was about attracting these like top people. So he even had like Richard Branson, the entrepreneur, coming to his classes. He had the Dalai Lama endorse him, and there were pictures of them together. And Dalai Lama saying, "You're fantastic." So it was all about like high society stuff, and I think there are, particularly with, I sort of worry about saying it, but it's a particular kind of maybe middle upper class woman with maybe a rich husband who's off doing all these different kinds of things, and they need purpose, and they are looking for any kind of purpose, often getting involved in charitable movements and stuff like that, East Coast, West Coast kind of thing. And so it gives them some sort of purpose, and they've not had all that love bombing and stuff before. Most of us haven't. But I think it is that sort of lack of purpose, and they're going into things, and maybe they're a bit innocent and a bit looking for different things, and they don't have enough of those community things in their lives, and they're not meant. Some of us, I think, are meant to be. We were discussing this before. We're meant to be quite individual, and I guess we're less likely to be sucked into cults and cult thinking. But I guess these people were. What do you think?
I mean, I think that, I don't know what draws people to it, but I have actually thought a lot about what prevented me from becoming woke when everyone around me became woke. And, because I feel like I was very susceptible to it. I mean, like I said, like I told you earlier, I was a Democrat for 20 years. I was a true believer Democrat. I was like, vote blue no matter who. I basically I got into politics really aggressively when George W. Bush was in office because I hated him so much. And then as soon as Barack Obama got elected, I was like, okay, I don't need to worry about this anymore. It's being taken care of now. The Democrats control things. I can shut my brain off. And when Donald Trump got elected president, I cried. I had moments where I was extremely upset. I didn't see it coming, and it really did kind of like dismantle my entire worldview. And at that time, basically everyone around me just started getting sucked into this, like, we hate Trump. He's the most evil person that has ever existed, ever, a racist, a misogynist, whatever. And I basically, like, a week after the election in 2016, I went, where did I go? Peru. That's where I went. I was like, I knew, like you said, Portugal, or I was like, oh my God, or Paraguay. I was confusing. I went to Peru to do ayahuasca on a mountaintop for like a week and a half. And that was pretty great. And so, but I basically, like, I threw myself into like spirituality because I was like, okay, this crazy things happen in the world. And I kind of talked myself up in my head. I was like, Trump's going to ruin everything. He's going to destroy the economy. I've just got my business going, whatever. But I really thought I was going to lose a lot of money just because I thought Trump was going to destroy the economy. And then I went off and I did all this spiritual work, and I said, you know what? I can do everything I want to do. I've got the power to make my life whatever I want to make it. And I really think that that piece is what saved me from getting sucked into the woke cult, because I had a higher purpose. I was serving people in the way I wanted to do it with my organizational psychology practice. I was writing a book about mindfulness. And so I feel like I had that purpose and direction elsewhere. And I also had, I think, a belief in something bigger than myself, which I think is important. And I think even people who are atheists can have a belief in something that's bigger of themselves. But I was basically like, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. Trump is supposed to be president for whatever reason that's supposed to be. And, you know, the country's probably going to be fine. And so I feel like I had a different perspective than a lot of my friends did, who just instantly, like, they started just bonding with each other over a shared hatred of this person. And I think that that's honestly one of the scariest things I've seen. And as someone who now has a whole bunch of people online who bond themselves together over a shared hatred of me, I look at them and I go, you are absolutely nuts. So I don't know. It's like people need, I guess I think you're right in that people like need something to focus their energy and attention on, that you're going to focus your energy on something, and it's either going to be something in which you're creating and giving value to the world, or it's going to be something that's fundamentally destructive. And you kind of have to make the decision about which of those two things is true. I don't know if I just made all that up or if it makes sense.
No, I think you're spot on. The only thing I'd say at the end is just that it's always so subjective, isn't it? Because we're all just such righteous people. We all like, obviously we hear a lot from woke people, we're on the right side of history. That becomes very important. And that's what you'd call in cults, you'd call that a thought terminating idea, or a thought terminating phrase. There were all these things that you'd say. I can't think of many off the top of my head, but you get them in all cults. They were just like ways to stop people asking questions. You can't challenge somebody who says, yeah, well, in the future, we're on the right side of history. You're like, it's like, okay, let's just not even have the conversation then. I often think about, when I was 18 at like university and going on a date with a girl or something like that. And when we all used to do that, like, what did we talk about? Because you feel like you're a grown up at 18, but you've literally been like away from your mummy looking after you for about a year. You were 14 4 years ago. I think Jordan Peterson said that, like, points that out as well. You were you were a little boy or a little girl literally like 4 years earlier. You've done nothing. So all you can talk about on a date is like your mum, your teachers at school, like football practice. There's nothing. And that's why you get, like, if you go to like the college dorms, and I'm sure you had this, we all had this, just like posters all around my room of different movies that somehow made me original. And it's like, okay, I don't have much background or personality or anything interesting to say for myself, but I can express my creativity through these people, and I can show these are the things that I support. I support Train Spotting and The Godfather, and that's my originality and my uniqueness, except that every other student has exactly the same posters in their rooms. As you get older, I think that's, and this is partly why I think there's so much woke among younger people as well. I think as you get older, maybe you have more other interests in your life. And maybe you don't. Some people don't. They stick with. So that's what I think cults do to an extent. They give you, like, as you say, a higher power, but also they give you some sort of personality characteristic without having to do very much. And that's why woke people, or people who are just obsessed with anything. I mean, have you? I'm not talking about people who are moderates with any. You can be moderate about everything. But have you had a chat with like a friend who suddenly got really into Bitcoin, like really into it, or really into fitness, right? It can get very boring. But that person talks to other Bitcoiners or other fitness people or other Jehovah's Witnesses or other Scientologists about Scientology. I talk to my own vice in that sense is soccer, football, and I can sit there and I talk with all these people, and to an outsider, endlessly boring. But to us, it's like this community, and I don't have to be funny, charismatic. I don't have to have interesting life stories. It's just my opinion about that particular soccer player, and that's enough. So I think that's what cults gives people.
It's funny you say that, because you asked me earlier if I had like a cult or like a sports team or anything that I felt like I was a part of, and I couldn't think of anything at the time. But the way you just described it there, that is absolutely true of me with like libertarian internal infighting within the Libertarian Party, because it's fascinating. Like, there's so much drama. There's always a coup of some sort, or a takeover attempt, or people getting kicked out of the party, or like people sending out these crazy mailers, and it is constant every single day. And I feel like I'm constantly talking about it with my libertarian friends, and we're like, who said what on Twitter today? What's going on? And no one else cares.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's Dungeons and Dragons as well. It's like, and the identity thing. You've seen that before as well on Twitter. Like loads of people. I can't remember what yours is, so I don't want to insult you in case yours is like that. But loads of people, it's like instead of listing like what they do or who they are, they're listing like the tribes to which they feel they belong. So it's like cisgender, trans. It's like something, like not just the trans stuff, but you know what I mean. And it's just like I want to say to them like, this is all stuff that is superfluous to me. If I met you in a park or in a job or at somewhere, you don't have to tell me which kind of person that you enjoy having sex with. You don't have to tell me which gender you want to. I could not be less interested. I want to know, what do you enjoy doing? Do you want to go for an excursion? Should we go for a walk? Should we watch the sunset? Not that I'm ever doing those things, but should we play sports? Should we watch a film? Like, do things. But I think maybe some people feel that they come up a little bit short in that area, and so they have to talk about the clubs they've joined. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that being part of like the woke cult, for lack of like a better term, I think it does offer people that sense of virtue as well. It's like I have to do this to be a good person, and if that's where they're getting their self-worth from and their self-esteem from, then of course they would become a part of that. And I mean, I said earlier today, I don't think that this is something they're going to grow out of at this point, just because I think it's just being constantly reinforced by their workplaces and by culture and stuff like that. But I mean, it is serving their life in some way, and if we can't get another way for them to fill the God-shaped hole in themselves, to quote Jordan Peterson. I mean, I don't know what it is. I have a really hard time understanding. Well, I guess maybe here's the question. Have you discovered a process that people go through when they're kind of like waking up and leaving a cult in the course of your research?
Well, I mean, the thing is, often they're just led by another cult. So, I mean, if I take Jehovah's Witnesses as an example, it's that they start to see maybe a few videos from Lloyd Evans and they get sucked into him. One of the things that, like a friend of mine called Stephen Knight, who's got a podcast, he's a friend of Ricky Gervais's, which I always say because it's cool that I've got a friend who is a friend of Ricky Gervais. But he does like Godless Spell Checkers, his podcast, and he's an atheist, but he's very, very anti-woke and all that stuff.
That's a great title, Godless Spell Check.
Well, he got quite well known, and Ricky Gervais got to know him because he used to basically just go around if people spelt atheist wrong, because atheist is not that easy to spell, he would just check the spelling and that was it. And that, one of those Twitter accounts that just does a particular thing and then that was it. So, but he said to Lloyd Evans of the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, he said something like that because Lloyd Evans is also very, very woke, and Stephen Knight said to him, like, you guys leave one cult, which is Jehovah's Witnesses, and you join another one and Lloyd said he said to me later when Stephen said that, he was very angry and he blocked him, and he said that is a terrible thing to say to somebody who's coming out of a cult, which I took as a thought-terminating thing to say. Again, it was like, don't question me, don't tell us what we're doing, and that's an emotional thing for us, we can't talk about that. And that's the very thing he says he's trying to go against. So, I have a video I put out today on my YouTube channel with a Hasidic Jewish woman who grew up in the ultra-Orthodox cults. And for her, it was, again, a similar thing where she was just like listening to bits of... She managed to get Wi-Fi in her house, and like her husband didn't even know, which I love the idea that, because Wi-Fi is just going on all around them and he just doesn't know. And just hearing snippets of different lives and different things, and eventually you just go. But unfortunately, often they go woke, and that's to do with what you're talking about with the virtue stuff. It's a way of like, oh, okay, so maybe my Jehovah God thing doesn't exist, but how else am I going to seem really, really righteous and tell other people that they're bad and I'm good? And woke is perfect for that.
So you're saying that we need to create an anti-woke cult to lure them into that will give them a false sense of security until we lure them away from the woke and into our cult.
Well, here's the thing, Carlin, is that we might be in it right now. And
God,
in a sense,
I really am a cult leader.
Yeah, I mean, to think that we and everyone listening now, that we're the ones who are not in the cult, if there are like thousands of different viewpoints and we are the ones that are correct, would be egocentric of us. So we have to like allow for the idea that we are as culty as them and as wrong as them. And sneakily, I think by doing that, I think that we're actually better than them. But,
I think it's us holding ourselves to a little bit of a higher standard than they are, which I can feel morally superior about that.
Yeah, that's what it's about. Look, there are three. There's a guy I really like called Will Storr, also on my podcast. He talks about something called the status game, and he looks at like evolutionary tribes, and there are three ways that you can gain status. And status is really important because if you've got status in your tribe, you get more of the food, and people share with you and that stuff. One is being dominant. So if you're just like a dominant alpha male, that's why more men tend to be sort of dominant. You know, your Harvey Weinsteins and all that kind of thing. If you're dominant, it makes sense you're going to get lots of the food. You might not have to go hunting. You let you guys go, or you'll, you know. Another is success, which I like. I think that's the cleanest way to like show off your virtue. It's like I'm good at stuff. I invented the wheel. I invented fire. Please, you know, share some food with me, and I'll invent some more stuff for you. The third way is virtue. But you don't get more food by being more virtuous. You get more food by showing and convincing others that you are more virtuous. So that became a big thing, and it makes sense that it might happen among more women, but there are a lot of men nowadays. It's sort of equal, you know. A lot of men are at it as well, because if you can't be dominant, and maybe you weren't dominant at a younger age, or I don't know what, it makes sense that status and virtue is the way to go, so that it's your way of being dominant. Basically, that's what I think it is.
All right, I'm gonna be thinking about that one. Maybe it's time that I embrace my identity as a cult leader and just like own it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna change my Twitter profile right now to say Karlin Borisenko cult leader.
But what are you using for status? Do you think dominance, success, or
I'd
virtue?
say I'm pretty dominant.
Yeah,
I don't
enough.
know. Can I be a mix of all three?
Yeah.
Excellent. That's probably the best diversity of cult leader tactic.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
So which is like, have there been any cults that you looked into that, I mean, I'm sure there's probably been several that you looked into, but like that like just like really like does it ever get to you?
Like, because the stories are so like out there, you mean, or so like sad.
Yeah.
The hardest stuff was like that exorcism thing. So that exorcism film was, you can see it now. I mean, I don't get any money for it, so don't watch it. But no, do, because it was good. It's on YouTube. You can just type exorcism Andrew Gold and you'll find it on the BBC's YouTube channel. That was difficult because that was really getting to know these young women, and it was often young women. And a psychiatrist I met out there explained to me like this: it's a really common thing out there for exorcists to just be like showing up at psychiatric wards and checking out some of the patients so that they can be exorcised. And so these are people going through really difficult times. And there was one particular woman called Candela, and she was 17 and she'd been cutting her arms, and it was really sad. And I got quite close with the family. And again, because we didn't have the BBC and everyone behind us at that point, it was just me and my friend David. So it means that we're doing all of the organizing as well, and we're meeting them in advance and getting very close to them. And then to see her believing that this was going to help this like abusive exorcist guy, you know, and whether you believe in that stuff or not, that's fine. But I'm telling you, this guy in particular definitely didn't. I mean, I performed the exorcisms with him. I literally did them. I was like ringing the bells over people's heads and stuff, and seeing them scream and stuff like that. So looking down and seeing Candela, this girl I'd gotten to know, who was so vulnerable and just in such a sad state, and such a sweet, lovely person, caring person, and looking down at her, and she is screaming like crazy. And it's scary, even if you don't believe in the paranormal. It's really scary to see a human being exposed like that and vulnerable like that, like beneath your feet, and you're just standing there with some bells. The funny thing we learned about that after was that it did help, the exorcism. So she had like bulimia and anorexia, and she had depression and suicidal tendencies, and those went away. And, you know, my belief is that that is to do with suggestion and hypnosis and placebo. And about a year later, I went back to see her, and she was bad again. But it was a good year. And that's a really interesting thing, because it's like, okay, well, maybe it's not, there's something in there that's not that bad. There's something that's like, oh, if it can help for a year, that's something. But like I say, that was really sad, sitting and talking with her. The other thing is like when you argue with someone, because if you're making these documentaries, and you're trying to expose someone. So this abortion one I did, I tried to look at both sides, but this woman called the Crazy Baby Lady, she is the daughter of a former dictator who used to disappear babies from people's families. And now she's the face of the pro-life campaign. So again, whatever side you're on, I think she doesn't make for like the ideal symbol of the pro-life campaign. But we got really friendly and close, and she was great. Like, we had different opinions about abortion, really, but like, I don't care. Like, she doesn't have to agree with me. And we were going out, and she like getting really close. But at the end, I had to ask her these difficult questions about like how appropriate it was for her to be doing all this stuff. And she got so upset. She was crying and then shouting at me. And then I sent her messages after, and she said to me, every day pro-choicers send me photos of their aborted fetuses, and it's horrible. And none of that ever hurt as much as your betrayal. That's what she said to me.
I find that a little bit hard to believe from a realistic point of view. But, I mean, I guess suppose the feeling was true for her at the time.
Yeah, maybe we'd gotten all friendly, I guess, and she'd introduced me to her family. So the way she saw it was like she'd taken me in. She was like feeding me and my friends and taking us on the school run to pick up her kids and stuff like that. I was close with her kids and stuff like that. And then I asked questions that maybe exposed stuff about her, and it was it felt like a betrayal for her. That was hard.
Yeah. Well, that was a really depressing topic for me to bring up, so kudos for me for that. Okay, I want to switch gears. Because you mentioned, you mentioned that you think that there might be something to like the exorcism stuff. I got really into meditation several years back, and I would do like all these like week-long workshops where we would get up and start meditating at 4 a.m. because it was the melatonin level is highest in your brain, and if the melatonin level is high, that makes it easier to sink deeper into meditation and all this stuff. And I've actually experienced physical healing from like meditation and the power of suggestion. I healed an injury that I had been to so many doctors for over the course of years, and just no one could ever fix this injury. And then in one meditation workshop, bam, injury gone. And I think for me, it was like if you can see yourself, like truly believe that you are a person that doesn't have that problem anymore, I think that does something to be able to fix the problem. And it kind of sounds like that may have been a similar thing that happened with an exorcism. Like, if you truly believe that an exorcism is a thing that's going to cure you and get rid of this problem, and then you have the exorcism, like, do you think that maybe they were just seeing themselves as this new person without this nagging problem?
Yeah. Well, again, like 100%. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And we've got to be careful how we speak about it, because a lot of doctors get a bit frustrated if you don't phrase it in exactly the right way. So we can't say like positive thinking can cure things, I think, but it definitely can statistically make things a bit better and alleviate pain and things like that. And I think it can actually cure things. So I don't know.
I'm convinced of it.
I'm putting it out there.
Yeah. In one of the meditation workshops I did, there was this dude that was there, and this one was like really focused on physical healing and like healing physical things. And there's this guy that he was in a wheelchair all week. I hadn't seen him walk at all. And then towards the end of the week, we did this walking meditation where you're supposed to walk around outside in the desert in New Mexico as the person that you want to be, and you're supposed to walk like that person and think like that person and all this stuff. And I passed this guy at the beginning of the meditation, and he was standing up, and he had two canes in front of him, and he was just like slowly walking with these two canes, and he had someone following him with a wheelchair just in case he needed it. And I was like, oh, that's great, that dude's walking, like that's awesome, like what an improvement. And then I passed him again on the way back, and he was holding a cane in each hand, marching. Like, I hadn't seen him walk like that all week, and I was like, holy shit. Like, this stuff can actually work if people really get into it and really believe it. And I don't know. I'm completely convinced that it actually does work, but I always sound crazy when I say that.
Well, often I think it's a temporary thing, like it's adrenaline and stuff like that, And I think so. Sometimes the problem with saying like, one of the reasons, like, for example, religious people sometimes say like if you pray it will help, and I think the problem can be that the message you're sending to, say, a little boy or a little girl whose mum is dying of cancer or something, and you're saying you've obviously not prayed hard enough. That's the message you're sending. So again, it's that my concern of going too deep into this is saying like, oh, well, obviously your mum wasn't trying hard enough, could have, so I wouldn't want to go too deep into it. And I think it is often a short-term thing, as it was with the exorcism stuff. It lasted a full year, and it does help. There's a great book called The Expectation Effect by David Robson, who's been on my podcast. And he talks about, there are actual studies out there that will show that, like, people who are like active and happy and want to live longer will live longer. People who have just lost a partner often die quite soon after, and that's about getting into negative thinking. There are loads of examples of presidents, I think, who died. I think there were 2 or 3 examples. I can't remember exactly what they were. Who died on like the day after the 50th anniversary, or like a really important anniversary date, and it's like they were obviously waiting out to make sure they lived that long. So there is evidence suggesting the expectation effect, that you think positively, and you should think positively. It's good.
Yeah, I think it was. Oh God, I'm gonna flub this. I might be too idealistic. I think it was Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the same day, 50 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, or something like that. It was one of those creepy, and they were not friends in real life. Yeah.
That's it. That's what it was. I think I'm sure that's what it was. And he was saying, they lived longer. And it's a great book, that Expectation Effect. And it's all about that kind, different ways that placebo and also nocebo, the opposite of the placebo, how that can sort of send you into a downward spiral. Once you think you're gone, once you've given up on life, you can really go downhill fast. So yeah, it's a band-aid, I think, and it can help you, and it can help you get through things. Positive thinking, but I don't think it's like the be all and end all.
Yeah. Well, AD says, I don't know if you've heard of him. Peter Popoff cured people with the power of faith. I don't know who that is.
Well, fair enough. AD is the first, my initials, Andrew David. But well, have you seen the Derren Brown thing on Netflix? You know Derren Brown?
No, what's this about?
Derren Brown is what they call a mentalist, which like a magician to an extent, but he can sort of read people's minds, but he does it without any sort of religious thing. He'll sort of, the kind of a bit like David Blaine. David Blaine,
yes,
but in English. He's like an English David Blaine to an extent. And he did this show, it's on Netflix, called Miracle, where he said, I'm not religious, I'm an atheist, don't believe in God, all that stuff, but I'm going to show you how this works. And he got people up and he said, this guy's like, I'm blind. And he goes, blah, 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 you're not blind anymore, read this. And the guy read it. And the guy's shocked. He's going, I can read it. And somebody else comes up and he's, I can't walk. And then he can walk. All those things, he did it. And he said, I promise you, there was no faith going on. There was no any of this stuff. I'm using the tricks of the trade to do this to you. And even saying that, it's still work. And that's the interesting thing about placebo. Even when you know it's a placebo, there's still evidence that it works. So someone gives you a sugar pill and you take the sugar pill and it still works.
I mean, and is it really a placebo if it has that effect? Does it really matter if it works?
No.
I want to switch gears because I want to talk about aliens. Okay. Yes. Do you believe in aliens?
Yeah, you got to believe in aliens. I don't believe in like the ones who've like walked around on the earth. What about you?
I definitely believe in aliens. I think that. Okay. So do you know about the Anunnaki?
No, tell me about the Anunnaki.
Okay, I think that the origin of civilization was aliens, called the Anunnaki, that came to Earth. Yes, that they came to Earth and they wanted to mine our gold, and so they spliced a genome together and they created us to be the beings that mined their gold. And then one of the brothers, and I always forget, Enki and Enlil, I think. So one of the brothers grew to like human beings, and the other one basically like saw us as pets and things, and we were like treated basically we were on like a farm or whatever, because we were just their slaves. We were mining their gold for them. But one of us came to like us, and then they ultimately ended up just like leaving, and we ended up settling the Earth after being created by aliens. That's my theory. I don't know.
It's remarkably similar to the Scientology origin story, but also have you seen? I did interview somebody on Sean Atwood's show on the Wednesday night thing who has looked into this from a very scientific standpoint, and there's Again, it doesn't sway me, but I can see why people might be. And there are certain genes or genomes or alleles or whatever they are deep down that shouldn't have suddenly changed at one point in our history as much as they did. And they reckon that's the signature of these aliens.
hmm Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the thing for me, but also there's stuff around ancient Samaria in terms of just like the improbability of a lot of like the geography and different things that were happening around the world. And I mean, I'm fully aware that I sound crazy when I talk about this. Mostly, I mean, it's just fun to think about, if nothing else. If I'm wrong, there's no ramification for me being wrong, but it makes
Sure.
more sense to me than we spontaneously evolved. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, my whole thing is like no moralizing as much as possible, no judging,
hmm
just like listen to people and be curious.
hmm
And you're right. Like there's no, like, I'm not religious. I'm an atheist. I describe myself as, and I don't believe they're aliens and stuff like that. But I don't have a better answer. Like my
hmm
answers, as you say, are just as mad. And scientists will go, what about, but evolution, all that stuff can be explained with science, and it can, but before that and before that, and nobody knows really.
Right.
So let's be curious and open and see.
Mhm.
I went looking for UFOs in a place called Capilla del Monte in Argentina.
Ah.
Yeah, that was fun, and it was part of. It was a video I did for a little series for HBO, and it was right at the start of my like TV making career, and it was really great because they sent us there for a week, and it was like 3 of us with our cameras and stuff, and it's this town that's like totally obsessed with aliens and UFOs and stuff, and it has become a bit of a new age tourist trap,
Mhm.
but it's in a really really beautiful area, as these places, the UFO places often are, because you can see so much more of the night sky. And everyone I met there was just like really, really into aliens. They all believed in them. We went hunting for them at night. Like we spent the whole night, me and somebody called Tato and Nasa, I think they were called,
Mhm.
like these two spirit guides. And they said, there you go. These are aliens from the 5th dimension who live underground. They're called Urks or something. And I was like, I can't see them. And he was like, yeah, but you've got to try and see them or they won't reveal themselves to you or something like that. And I was like, all right, I don't think so. But,
Yeah, I don't know if I would believe in that type of alien. You need to be able to. I mean, if an alien doesn't want to manifest itself, then it doesn't want to be seen.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. What a sad thought. Like we live. That's one of the saddest things about dying and getting old and stuff. I mean, the worst part is
Mhm.
just getting old, really. But one of the worst things is like you leave and the party continues without you. And there's so much cool stuff that's going to happen, unless we all just die from climate change or whatever it might be. But there's so much cool stuff. Like, what's the world going to be like? In 100 years, 200 years, or 1,000 years? What's it going to be like in like 50,000 years if humans are still around? And we don't get to see that. We don't get to see like if the aliens come or they realize if there is a God, or we just, oh man, I really hope we do live forever.
Well, I feel like the aliens are going to show up at some point. Like, I mean, even during our lifetime, because right after the pandemic started, I remember they started announcing, like, the Pentagon was announcing, like, that they
Hmm.
declassified UFO information, and no one cared. And I was like, "What are you talking about? They're telling us there are UFOs, and no one cared about it at all." So I feel like the aliens are like close, but I think they're
Yeah,
already here. Generally, I just think they haven't revealed themselves yet.
maybe. I sort of hope so. Like, it's such a nice idea. We're all looking for like something. We're so tired. We've had years of just like lockdown and stuff. I want to see
Mhm.
cool stuff. I want to see an alien go like, all right, we're here. Come on, let's all go to the
Mhm.
place where we live forever. I had an interesting person the other day. I spoke to a guy called Dr. Andrew Steele, who thinks we can cure aging. He's a biologist, a
Oh.
British biologist, and I had him on the podcast a while ago, and then I had him again recently just to see what's going on, because they did just the other day. Scientists managed to either reverse or just like rejuvenate skin cells in a woman. And they managed to actually make them like from 55 years old to 22 years old or something like that, which is
Excellent.
again, what you're saying about no one cared about the UFO stuff. This was
Mhm.
another one that was like, what? Everybody should be like, this is insane. We can maybe be young again when we get old. But there are so many other bits. I read his book, and it's like, well, that's one of like the 50 things we have to be able to do to stop aging and cure
Mhm.
aging. And then people often say they don't want that anyway, so that's fair enough. But he said one other way to do this, which might be more achievable if you want to live forever or seemingly forever, and probably more likely than curing aging, is simulations, where we sort of go into
Mm.
virtual reality and they slow down time to super super fast computers that slow down our experience, our subjective experience. So 1 second in real time would pass, but inside the machine, infinite amounts of years would seem to pass which would give us endless time to sort of solve the mysteries of the universe and live as long as we want, and then take the machine off, kind of thing.
I don't know. I'm rather scared to die, or not scared to die. I'm actually rather excited to die because I want to see what happens after. Not that I'm in any hurry to die, but I mean,
Sure.
I think that when we die, our soul like leaves our body. We go up to the spirit realm. We do a life review, all that new age woo woo stuff. And I actually like I want to see what happens, and I want to be able to have that
Mm.
perspective of like looking down with this greater knowledge of like where we all come from. I think that would be really exciting.
I
But
think it was Hamlet who said in Shakespeare's Hamlet thing, he said the only thing that scares him more than dying is the thought of being in heaven forever.
Well, I think we live multiple lives, so I think we can come back whenever we want and live another life if we so choose. Maybe this is wishful thinking, but whatever. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Don't want to come back as like a bug.
No. I mean, there are some interesting YouTube channels where they channel things like different elements, like they'll channel wind or they'll channel a flower and ask about that experience and like why would you choose to be a flower? Well, I mean, I suppose that there's something about patience and and not trying to control things and things like that
Yeah.
that might be positive experiences. I don't know.
Yeah. Until a dog pisses on you.
Yeah, that's probably not so good. Do
No.
you have you seen Stephen Greer's work around like Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where he asserts that and he does like these alien hunting adventures where he has people like out in the desert or somewhere and they all meditate together and they do these really specific meditations, and his whole theory is that we can communicate with aliens through consciousness. And I was kind of like, that makes sense to me. Of like all the ways that we could possibly communicate with aliens, that would definitely be the higher life form way to communicate would be through
Mm.
consciousness.
Yeah, but we don't have that ability. Like if they're able to do stuff through consciousness, I don't know. I like that a bit like that film Arrival. That's one of my favorite films. Did you
Mm,
see that?
yeah, it was a great movie. Yeah.
Oh, I just cried my eyes out. Oh, I
Mhm.
love the twist. There's a twist, everyone. If you haven't seen it, there is a twist, but
We can do a
won't spoil.
spoiler. We can do it's been out for years. People haven't seen it. It's their own damn fault.
Yeah, if you learn, well, that was really interesting because again, I'm really interested in languages. I started learning languages in my 20s,
Mhm,
got really into those, and I was rubbish at school, really bad at like
mhm,
languages, never good. And in my 20s, I just suddenly realized that we can learn. I didn't know that like English or American brains were able to learn other languages.
mhm.
It felt like something that only like non-English speakers can do, and we aren't able to. And so once I got the first one, it was like such a thrill. I got like obsessed and learn all these languages and stuff. And what's really interesting is something called the Sapir-Whorf
Mhm.
theory, which is what Arrival is really about. It's an exaggerated form of it, but the Sapir-Whorf is this idea that we all experience different things depending on the languages that we speak. So, like if you're speaking French, you would view a bridge as a masculine thing. If you're speaking German, you'd see a bridge with like a feminine, elegant quality. And so you have different experiences based on the languages that you speak. And Arrival took that to like the next level. And it was like if you learn the alien language, you can see all of time, and time becomes one big thing. And you know what's really beautiful about time being one thing?
Mhm.
It's my favorite science thing about like
Oh.
space and stuff is, and it's a theory, but I think it's the most sort of the best theory we have at the moment about how time works. And it's not time. There's no such thing as time. It's space time. It's all
Yes.
one map of, you could, if you had a map of, like you have a map of space, you could have a map of space time. You could see where it all is. Now you can't travel back in time. You can go forward, but it's a bit of not a really great way of going forward. But that would imply that everything that's going to happen is on that map in the future, and everything that
Mhm.
has happened is in the map in the past, and those things are still happening if you were to travel, if you could travel to that point in time. So it means that anybody that you've lost in your life, any loved one that you have, and you're thinking they're lost forever, well, they're still living those moments just in a different part of space time, which I
Mhm.
find really beautiful.
Yeah, in my belief system, everything that has ever happened or will ever happen is happening right now. And so it's kind of the
Yeah.
same thing. It's like that's one of the most difficult spiritual concepts to kind of wrap your head around is like there is no time. Everything is happening right now. And then we just use time as like a sorting mechanism to help us organize our thoughts and to be able to see things clearly. That's a total mind fuck right there of a thought
Yeah.
experiment.
That is. And then scientists often just say it's just everything going from like harmony to discord. That's what time is. And that doesn't really make sense in my head.
Yeah. Well, AD says, I don't know how to pronounce this at all. Is this like a Star Trek thing that I don't understand? My favorite alien is Georgie. I don't know. I don't know what
Uh,
this is, AD. I feel like this is a sci-fi thing that I don't get.
should we try and pronounce it?
Giorgio I suck at pronunciation. You speak all the languages. How would you pronounce it?
Well, I don't speak this one because that looks Greek, but I'm going to go with Giorgio Tsoukalos.
Let's go with that.
Yep.
Thank you, AD, for the super chat. Appreciate it. Well, Andrew, is there anything else that we should talk about before we start to wrap things up, or anything else on your mind?
Don't know what's going on really. I think that's it. We should do these more often, shouldn't we? We can come up with some subjects.
No, absolutely. We can do these anytime you like. I think that would be pretty great. So what are you working on right now that people should know about?
I am working on... Oh, you know what? I'm writing a book. That's another thing. I'm writing a book which the working title is The Psychology of Secrets for Pan Macmillan Publishers. Because it sort of goes back to that cult leader aspect of having a podcast or a YouTube channel. People started to reveal their secrets to me. One person told me that they murdered someone, and it showed me all the news snippets that sort of proved it.
Wow.
Yeah, man, people start to trust you with stuff. And I just kept getting messages, I guess because I deal with a lot of sort of trauma on the show, and I try and do it in a nice way, and people think, oh, I want to tell him stuff too. So I get messages that don't even say, oh, hang on, has my camera gone? Hang on, I shall pop it back up.
It's okay.
It does.
AD says that was the ancient alien guy. See, I've never seen Ancient Aliens. I know of this show because it does like Anunnaki stuff, but I've never actually watched it. I learned about Anunnaki from other places.
Yeah, I don't know about the Ancient Aliens thing.
That's okay.
It's a shame. But yeah, other people would message saying like, hi Andrew, my first memory is my grandfather putting his hand down my panties when I was, and it's just like I'm getting message after message like that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to look into like what is the reason we reveal secrets to people, what makes us keep secrets, what is it evolutionarily about us, about our societies that makes us sometimes keep them, sometimes reveal them. And so I went and met some of the people keeping the biggest secrets in the world. And the people keeping like the hardest secrets to keep they need to be ones that if they were revealed, that it would ruin their lives, maybe get them killed. So they have to sort of protect themselves and protect their status, something that could ruin their status, but also something that is very much linked with their identity. So one thing I would think of in that respect is gay people when they weren't able to be open about it. I think of like Alan Turing or whatever, but nowadays in the UK and the US, it's pretty much fine to be gay, which is good, I think. But
yeah, bonus.
But yeah, good bonus. Do whatever you want. But obviously, it's not okay to be. I don't want to say the word in case it does something to your YouTube algorithm. But people who are interested in children, now those people rightly are not able to act out on their thoughts or whatever. But I figured that they would be the people keeping the secret that is the hardest one to keep, that would be tearing them apart. So I went and met all different ones. It's just one part of the book. And one of them that I found really interesting, who I'm going to write about in the book, was a 25-year-old woman who's really, really into that stuff, but never acted on it. And she is having a terrible, terrible time. So that's the book, all about secrets, people having horrible secrets, murderers, whatever, and that's it. That's what I'm working on at the moment.
How is the writing going for you?
I'm not enjoying it, actually. I don't.
Writing a book is hard. It's really effing hard.
Yeah, it's really hard, and it's just like it's work, and I don't want to do it. I want to do my YouTube channel. I wanted to keep doing my podcast, and then it's like you got to sit down and actually write another chapter. And starting a new chapter is the worst. Like, at least when you're sort of midway through. I mean, how did you find writing yours? Was that one of your first books?
My first book was it's called Zen Your Work. It's about mindfulness strategies you can use in the workplace, and I wrote that one a couple of years ago. And what was interesting about that one is I sold the book to the publisher, and then I had like 6 months to write the book. And I got to like month 4.5, and I realized that I hated everything that I had written so far, and so I threw it all out and I rewrote the whole thing in like 3 weeks, and it actually turned out like much better. And so when it came to into Actively Unwoke, I'm like, this is gonna be great. I can write a book in like 3 weeks. This is gonna, and I totally overpromised when I could deliver this book, because the publisher was like, when can you have it done? And I was like, end of June, no problem. And this was like in at the beginning of May. And so I was like, I gave myself even a little bit of buffer. This is gonna be fine, whatever. And I'd already kind of outlined it in my head, and I knew what I wanted to do. And then it turned out to be like the hardest thing in the world to write, because I couldn't get my head around the concept of the book and how to actually execute it, because I wanted to weave back between my story and how to fight back against the woke, and it was just going horribly. And then at the beginning of June of last year, I underwent the worst cancellation I've ever undergone, which was I was attacked by legitimate white identitarians for like 3 straight weeks, and it was really effing bad. And so this is all happening at the same time that I'm trying to finish my book. Anyway, I blew my deadline by about 3 weeks, but my publisher forgave me, and I think the book turned out great.
Oh, well, that's good. They gave me like 2 years, maybe because it's my first book. They were just like,
oh wow,
see you in 2024. So doing that in like 6 months like you did, wow, that's stressful, because you're doing your YouTube channel, you're doing all this stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, I my prime writing hours are really between 10 o'clock at night and 3 o'clock in the morning, just because it's like I don't have any other work to do. It's the quietest time. But man, there were several weeks where I wasn't sleeping because I had to do my work during the day and then the book at night, and it was just I was acting a little crazy. Let's just say that.
Will you, after that experience, are you going to look to write more books? Because books are really, unless they go mad successful, they're not.
Yeah.
It's more for prestige, isn't it?
It is. I have like 4 or 5 different books in my head that I want to write now. I've got this idea for, and no one steal my ideas. I've got I've got an idea. I want to do a book of like stream of conscious essays about what it's like to red pill, and I want to call it like the Red Pill Diaries. And just like here's how I view the media. Here's all this crazy stuff that's going on. Here's like conservatives are just as crazy as the left, and just like have it be total stream of conscious, just like stuff. I also have an idea for a book called The Art of the Trigger, and to teach people how to like play mind games with people and screw with people online, because I'm okay at that. I have some game.
I've heard.
You've been following my Twitter lately.
Yeah.
So like stuff like that. I want to do a follow-up field guide to Actively Unwoke, but right now I just want to get the book out, because like I mean you're discovering this through your process. It's like birthing a child, except it's a much longer time frame usually. And your childbirth process is going on a lot longer than mine did, and I'm already sick of it. I'm like, the book just needs to be launched already.
Yeah. Just want it out. Just want it out my uterus. I want my book to be out the uterus and just out in the world. And obviously, I mean, if you put so much work and time into it. I mean, I know that feeling of obviously doing a YouTube video and you put like a few days of work into it, and then it just like bombs and like 10 people watch it or something. So doing a book for like a year and it doesn't do as well as you want, I don't know if you've experienced that or not, but like that must be.
I was a little disappointed with how my first book did, but then at the same time, I was also like, it also helped a lot of people. So it was a little bit, it is a process. And just to warn you, you're going to go through a phase 2 after you write your book and after you turn it into the publisher, that you decide that you hate absolutely everything about the book for a little while and you don't want anyone to read it.
Oh my God. I'm already getting that way because it's so long. It's such a long, it's like a chapter a month at the moment that I'm doing. And after each chapter, I do look at it and go, I never want to see you again. And I hope they don't want me to make any changes, because I just don't want to look at it again.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it'll be fine. I know people in the chat, I think, are pretty excited about what you described. I'd like to read your book. I think it'd be great.
Oh, that's nice. Even more pressure.
No way. No way.
Yeah.
So what else are you working on, and where can people find you?
Okay, what else? It's the podcast. It's all the podcast. It's the podcast and the book. That's what it is at the moment. They can find me. I don't care about all of the other stuff. Obviously, there's Twitter, but like when you say on YouTube, hey, come follow me on Twitter, like no one does anyway. You're on YouTube, right? That's where you want to be. So just On the Edge with Andrew Gold. That's why I put my little name there. On the Edge with Andrew Gold. And it's all the stuff we talked about. It's just like all sorts of episodes. Carlin's episode will be out in a few weeks, and you know some of the stuff you said. Oh, they're going to want to hear that.
Excellent.
No,
a little spicy preview.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and mad psychopaths. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about psych, but we can do that another time. Psychopaths.
Yes, I would definitely like to talk about that. All right. Well, I mean, thank you so much for coming on, Andrew. I think everyone's talking in the chat about how much they love this. So I think it's just the accent myself, but you know.
Oh, that's so nice. I haven't seen, because I can't see any of it. That's really lovely.
I didn't hide. You could have seen. So I want to dispel any rumors. I didn't hide the chat from him. I did a whole stream on Saturday about complaining about being on someone's channel because they hid the chat from me, and then they allowed their chat to attack me viciously for 3.5 hours, and I didn't
Oh
see
my
it.
god.
But I'll teach you how to. I'll teach you how to
Oh.
see the chat
Oh, I
next
can
time.
see it now. I can
See,
see it.
I don't hide the chat from my guests on my channel.
But you know what? Because I was telling you I've
What?
got this really cool thing where I can now look into the camera and see
You were
you.
focused. You were like celebrating that you got your teleprompter to work.
I'm so excited it arrived today. And but yeah, because I hate it. I look back at videos of me and I'm like over there. Like, why am I looking over there? Like the person's there. I want to talk to them. But it's because that's where the screen is. But now I've got you right here. But what it's done is it's reflected the screen so that all the comments are like in the mirror to me. So I can't actually see what they say.
Wow. They're all saying good things. They're all saying good things.
Ah.
And Sarah
lovely.
says, Andrew, please talk about exorcisms. Maybe we can do that next time, Sarah. And he's got a great documentary about the exorcism stuff like he was talking about. All of that is in the description below. So you can find Andrew's link tree and watch the BBC documentary and subscribe to his YouTube channel and even follow him on Twitter if you're so inclined. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait to do this again soon.
Cool. All right, I'm just gonna wrap things up real quick. All right, guys, I just got an FYI. I know I said earlier that we were gonna have nothing remotely controversial with Joshua tonight, but Joshua literally just texted me while we were on the show and said he's not feeling great tonight. So I'm sorry. I think we're gonna have to cancel nothing remotely controversial tonight. It's no problem or anything. No one needs to freak out, but we will be back next week. Well, hopefully anyway. But hopefully, actually, no, you don't even have to wait till next week to see Joshua though, because we're all gonna pray and send Joshua loving and healing energy and hope that he is well enough for our astrology class tomorrow night. So our locals members will be able to interact with Joshua tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to do a private Zoom call and he's going to teach us all about astrology. And we'll forgive him for canceling tonight because we want him rested up for us tomorrow. And if you want to get access to that and all the other perks that come with being my locals members, to include 2 Zoom calls a week with me, dude, we went almost 5 hours on Zoom last night. We wrapped up just shy of midnight last night on our community Zoom call. And there were like probably 12.5 people still there at the very end. So if you want to come to our community Zoom calls that we do twice a week, we do them on Mondays at 7 p.m. And then tomorrow we have one Wednesdays at noon. So you'll be able to get in on our Zoom call and you'll get astrology class with Joshua. You'll get conversations with God book club coming up. You'll get all sorts of other stuff too. You can join my locals at kb.locals.com. There we go, /support. And you can join for $5 a month or $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. And you can request an autographed book plate from me for the book if you go with that option. You can also make a one-time gift, which I really, really support. And I guess we'll be back live tomorrow on this channel, live at 5, and just check in later in the day tomorrow. And I will let you know what I'm going to be talking about because I don't know yet because I have to see what's going on in the world. But we'll see you guys tomorrow at 5. Take care and have a great rest.